Hey everyone, it's May and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing another breakdown review video of a Nightwish album, and today we're doing Endless Forms Most Beautiful. I wish I had the shirt still. I had one in high school, but I outgrew it. This album is kind of special to me because it's like the Nightwish album that was the most recent. I forget if it had come out already or if they were like releasing the singles when I was first getting into them, so it was like kind of the first Nightwish album that I experienced in real time. It is Nightwish's 8th album, and it is the first album with Floor, and it is also the first without Yuka, who was replaced by Kai on drums. Yuka had to quit the band because of his insomnia. The concepts for the album are inspired by Charles Darwin and Richard Dawkins. The title of the album is actually from Darwin's book On the Origin of Species, and the quote that it's from is, "There's grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved." I got some of this background information from Wikipedia and some of it from interviews, but Thomas said that they had a really cinematic feel for Imaginarium, which was the album before this, and for Endless Forms he wanted more of a stripped down like band sound. And lyric wise, Thomas said that Imaginarium was about the power of imagination, while Endless Forms Most Beautiful is more of a tribute to science and the power of reason, and it's about the beauty of life, the beauty of existence, nature, and science. I think it's interesting because I forget exactly what interview this specific fact is from. I'm going to link the other interviews, but I remember at one point Tom was talking about like how he wanted to be a biologist when he was younger, like that's what he was studying before he got Nightwish off the ground, I think. So it's kind of interesting that he was able to like pull that in here. Personally, I don't like this album as much as I like Imaginarium, but it's still good. It has a very Nightwish sound still, even though there's a different singer, obviously. I know some people have a bit of a problem with it in that they think that Thomas isn't using like Floor's full vocal capacity. Like I've heard this from multiple Nightwish fans over the years. I can't really speak to that because I've only listened to like a few of Floor's songs before Nightwish. Like I think I can kind of understand what people are saying there because she has like such a range. She can do everything from growling to these super operatic vocals, but I do remember reading in an interview that Thomas was aware of her range, but he just didn't think that the songs needed that. They tried having her do operatic vocals for some of the songs, but it just didn't really work. But yeah, I still think that it sounds really cool, and I actually saw them in concert when they were touring with this album. I'll insert the picture right here. Little baby me in high school. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it, and Margot was still with him at the time, obviously, so it's extra special. I'm gonna try to structure this video a bit more like my earlier videos where I used to only talk for like 20 minutes instead of 40 to an hour because it just gets really overwhelming for me to edit. So I'm not gonna read all the lyrics. I'm just gonna talk more about the song in general, and if you want to follow along, you can be pulling up lyrics on Genius, or if you have the album, you can just be kind of following along with that if you want to follow along while you watch the video. So track 1 is Shudder Before the Beautiful. So it has a very dramatic introduction to the album, as Nightwish usually does. It's a bit reminiscent of Dark Chest of Wonders, starting with a quote like that, and the lyrics remind me of Stargazers a little bit, like talking about Earth and space. It basically seems to be talking about human awe at life around us and saying that Earth is just an island in the universe, it's a pilgrim, and we're the voyagers. So I'll just read the chorus here to highlight that. "The music of this awe, deep silence between the notes, deafens me with endless love. This vagrant island Earth, a pilgrim shining bright. We are shuddering before the beautiful, before the plentiful, we the voyagers." So with that, it's saying Earth is just this island in the universe and it's a pilgrim and we're the voyagers. I would say the music is the human experience and the deep silence between the notes is reflection about our lives, and the bridge says the unknown, the grand show, the choir of the stars, interstellar theater play, etc. So those little references kind of take it back to Stargazers, like the Earth is like the theater for the play of life because we're the only known planet with life, and it's like this play that takes place at the theater. Track 2 is Weak Fantasy. Basically, from what I read of people's interpretations on song meanings, people thought that it was, and I agree, kind of like taking down religion, and some people were saying that it was like so surprising that Thomas would write something like this after like having used so many biblical references in the past and stuff. Like I can kind of see it because like this album was more of a turn toward reason and science. Like I don't think it's necessarily saying that all religion is bad or delusional, but it's calling out the negative aspects of organized religion, like fear and the need for certainty and the damage it can cause in our lives. But it's not actually, in my opinion, like taking down spirituality, just like the negative aspects of organized religion and just like that human need for certainty, like to fill our fear on the unknown with certainty, because religion, I feel like, has turned into the need to be certain and to know you're right and everyone else is wrong, when it should be about faith and spirituality. And it's like, you have to kind of find that if you're looking for that. You're not necessarily going to find it with all organized religion. Thomas has made a lot of biblical references in the past, and I don't think this is necessarily saying that he's deleting all of that. It's just that he is pointing out religion's flaws. Well, he's made those biblical references. He's also always seemed to be an advocate for like wonder and awe, like with the Riddler and not knowing all the answers. In the second verse, when it says a storytelling breed we are, I think that could be about kind of how we're wired for story as humans. Like that's how we make sense of things. And so like needing, you know, a story of religion to like make sense of our lives is probably what he's getting at there. And it can be harmful when we choose to buy into certain stories just because we want an answer or an explanation for everything. And then from words into War of the Worlds in the bridge, that line makes me think of just like how organized religion has been sometimes like at the root of, you know, terrorism or war. Everyone cites like their god or their religion as the reason for their violence. So I think that that is kind of talking about the power of words and how it can be used for a negative end. Track 3 is Elan, one of my favorites. This quick background fact was actually potentially going to be cut from the album when they were in the demo stage. Then it kind of came together and ended up being the first single. It is the first Nightwish song with Floor that I heard, actually, when I watched the music video on YouTube, and I loved it. Before that, I'd really only been listening to like their Ataria stuff, so it was very different, but yeah, I really liked it, and I think I am gonna go through all the lyrics on this one because I have a bit more to say about it more specifically, so we'll just go through it piece by piece. Leave the sleep and let the springtime talk in tongues from the time before man. Listen to a daffodil tell her tale. Let the guest in walk out, be the first to greet the morn. The meadows of heaven await harvest, the cliffs unjumped, cold waters untouched, the elsewhere creatures yet unseen. Finally your number came up, free fall awaits the brave. The first verse is basically beckoning the listener to come on an adventure. The let the springtime talk in tongues from the time before man is saying that like nature has always been around so far before humans have, kind of tying back into that evolution. And if you listen to nature, it like has so much to teach us. Kind of same with the listen to a daffodil tell her tale, like we can learn so much from nature. The next part of the verse is basically talking about like this untouched nature and beckoning you to come along. There's also a Meadows of Heaven reference, which was featured on Dark Passion Play. So it's basically just depicting untouched nature that's waiting for someone to experience it. And then the chorus is come taste the wine, raise the blind, race the blind, actually, I think this is wrong. They will guide you from the light, riding knots till the end of time, come surf the clouds, race the dark. It feeds from the runs undone, meet me where the cliff greets the sea. Let me know, I'm pretty sure it's race the blind. For some reason, Genius like is not letting me pull this up, so I'm just using Google because I don't actually own this album, but whatever. Because when I was looking up on song meanings, it might have been Genius, but I have no way of checking now, people were saying that like the blind is metaphorical. It's people who can't see what's important in life, and it's urging the listener to outrun them. Because if it was raise the blind, that would be different. I'm not sure what that means. I thought that that was supposed to echo in the second half, like race the dark, like you're trying to outrun the dark and the blind who aren't seeing the light, and you want to see the light. Is what I got from that. And then the second verse is the answer to the riddle before your eyes, in dead leaves and fleeting skies, returning swans and sedulous mice. Writings on the garden's book and the minute of a lover's look. Building a sandcastle close to the shore, a house of cards from a worn-out deck, a home from the fellowship, poise and calm. Write a lyric for the song only you can understand. So I think that that first part, the answer to the riddle before your eyes and dead leaves and fleeting skies, is saying like the answers to everything lie in nature. And a lot of the images in this verse are things that are temporary, which I did get this insight from Genius. I remember that specifically. I think that one only talked about the sandcastle and the house of cards, but actually everything in this verse is kind of a temporary phenomenon. So the dead leaves have fallen from the trees, that will be swept away, and there will be new growth. Fleeting skies, the sky never stays the same, it's constantly changing. Returning swans and sedulous mice might just be like, you know, about animals in nature always going places. The minute of a lover's look is fleeting, and then a sandcastle will get swept away by the ocean, and a house of cards can collapse. So it's showing that nature and also life are are in constant change. I believe this was also from Genius, but a home from the Fellowship poised and calm is like a direct contrast to the sandcastle and the house of cards, because whereas those can be easily destroyed, this is saying it's something more sturdy. The bridge is riding hard, every shooting star, come to life, open mind, have a laugh at the orthodox, come drink deep, let the dam of mind seep, travel with the great elan, dance a jig at the funeral. So it's basically just urging the listener to get the most out of life, like experiencing everything life has to offer to the fullest and not be afraid to follow your own path even if it's unconventional, is kind of what I got from the come to life, open mind, have a laugh at the orthodox, dance a jig at the funeral, but to do things your own way. And from Genius, someone pointed out that the word elan actually means enthusiasm. So I think if I had to like say the overall meaning, it kind of seems like it's asking the listener to turn to nature and see what they can learn from the natural world and to go into life with enthusiasm to experience everything to the fullest. Track 4 is Yours is an Empty Hope. The introduction reminds me a bit of Dark Chest of Wonders, like just that first bit with the guitars. I thought it reminded me of something else too, but I guess I didn't write it down. So from Song Meanings and Genius, people said that it was about like internet bullies and haters, and I didn't really have an interpretation of this by myself, but once I saw that, that kind of made sense. And the lyrics did give me a similar vibe to Slaying the Dreamer, like Troma's just kind of getting his anger out at the people who frustrate him in the industry, kind of. Where I think that insight really makes sense is the line, your screen name verbal vanity. So like when someone's behind a screen, they can just say whatever they want. They can be a troll online and just like tear people down without having to face the consequences, and like they made their screen name like something vain is what I think it's saying there. The first line, tear me to bits, enjoy the scene, is basically just saying that they're enjoying watching Tromas suffer. I feel like this could be interpreted differently, but if we're going with the internet bully route, it's like saying that these people have lost their way, but they could still find their way in life again. The part when it says you have the world, it's all for you, I wish you'd find the lost in you, which I thought that line was interesting because I feel like it kind of connects back to I want my tears back. Before the years take me, I wish to see the lost in me. I think it's kind of saying like he wishes that they would get past their ego and try to find an actual sense of purpose in life, or to try to find like some meaning again. And then the lines that say I can't make you want the truth, it's up to you, could be about maybe how people are only seeing what they want to see about his life as they're bullying him. And yours is an empty hope is basically saying that because they're filling their life with hate, like things they hope for, like their goals, are empty, but there's still a chance for them to turn things around. The second verse again kind of talks about how they're tearing him down, and then turns around and says, stop, life is now still all for you, turn from the hate, turn from the smoke, I see the parchment of your soul. So it's like encouraging people to try to like find their way again, because you know, sitting around at your computer and tearing other people down on the internet, well, it's become very common, is not a productive way to live your life, and it says more about you than the people that you're bullying, and clearly you have a void that you need to fill somehow by tearing others down like that. And so he's like encouraging people to kind of find their way again, I think, if we're going with that interpretation, but I feel like there's definitely other ways that it could be taken. Track 5 is Our Decades in the Sun, which is the only ballad. In an interview, Thomas said it's a tribute to all of their parents, and it was a very emotional process for the band to record this. I now have Yours is an Empty Hope stuck in my head. Anyway, verse 1 is I climbed off your back not so long ago to a blooming meadow, to a path you'd made for the lightest feet. So it's about childhood, and so when you're a kid, you're like carried on your parents' back, I think is what that means. Oh, and it also could connect back to Meadows of Heaven when it says to a blooming meadow. The first chorus is Mother, I am always close to you, I will be waving every time you leave. Oh, I am you, the care, the love, the memories, we are the story of one. And chorus 2 replaces that with Father, and then the last line is you are forever in me. So I think it could be about touring, like when they have to be apart from their families, or just life in general as you like start your life and you're not, you know, spending as much time with your parents, and how they still feel connected to their family even when they're so far from them. The bridge is this verse we wrote on a road home for you, all this for you, all this for you. So that's saying kind of like how their parents still influence everything they do. Like this verse we wrote for you, like you're still influencing our art and our work. You're still such a big part of our lives. And verse 2 is our walk has been sublime, a soaring ride and gentle lead. You have the heart of a true friend. one day we'll meet on that shore again. Could be, I don't know, if maybe one of them has like parents who have passed away or family that has passed away, and by saying the heart of a true friend is kind of talking about all the support that their parents have given them. Because I think for most of them, you know, like starting out, I know like Thomas, I think, has talked about it, wanting to start a band and like needing money for, you know, a keyboard and stuff. When you're a kid, that's like, oh, like that's just a silly dream, like you should get a real job. Their parents had had that attitude, maybe they wouldn't be where they are today, but like their parents helped them along the way to get to where they are, I think is what that's saying. Track 6 is My Walden. This is inspired by Walden by Henry David Thoreau. I remember having to read that, or at least parts of it, in high school English. It's basically about Thoreau's experiences living in like solitude in nature by a place called Walden Pond, so that's why it's called that. This song, from what I got from it, is essentially like Thomas's own ode to nature. In an interview, Thomas said that this is kind of a continuation of sorts of I Want My Tears Back musically, because it really highlights Troy, and I definitely heard that when I listened to this. It kind of has that same feel. The song just is a very like vivid depiction of a setting. It's basically saying he's like creating his own Walden. The chorus is weaving my wings from many colored yarns, flying higher, higher, higher into the wild, weaving my world into tapestry of life, it's fire golden in my Walden. And the bridge is I do not wish to evade the world, yet I will forever build my own, forever my own, forever my home. I'm not sure if it's based on nature that he's familiar with, like he's talked about, you know, Finnish nature in songs before, or if it's purely fantasy, because I think kind of based on the bridge there, like saying that he wishes to build his own world, it might be more toward that fantasy, like if he could build his own world somewhere, this is what it would be like. I also think that this could be taken maybe a step further and kind of just having it be talking about how you create your own reality by choosing how to live your life. Track 7 is Endless Forms Most Beautiful. In an interview, Thomas talked about how this was inspired by Richard Dawkins' book The Ancestor's Tale about evolution. I am going to go a bit more into the lyrics for this one. So first one is, come on, hop on, let's take a ride. Come meet the travelers who came to town. They have a tale from the past to tell, from the great dark between the stars. So again, kind of like Elan, it's like beckoning the listener to come on an adventure. The great dark between the stars, I think, was just talking about space, like where everything originated from. We are a special speck of dust, a fleeting moment on an arc, a celebration, a rest haven of life. I think that's basically talking about how tiny we are in the scheme of the whole universe, but the life on Earth is what makes us special. Lay on a field of green with Mother Eve, with Father Pine reaching high, look at yourself in the eyes of Ai, unfolding rendezvous. According to Genius, Ai is a lemur from Madagascar, and on Song Meaning someone mentioned that there is a connection to a travel book called Last Chance to See by Douglas Adams, where he describes himself looking into the eyes of Ai and basically showing how all forms of life are connected. I had never actually thought about what that meant before when I listened to the song. And the chorus is deep into the past, follow the aeon path, greet a blade of grass, every endless form most beautiful, alive, aware, in awe before the grandeur of it all, our floating pale blue arc of endless forms most beautiful. So the blade of grass in the chorus is kind of another example of how all life is connected. By going into the past is where we'll kind of understand our present, and we are part of the life on Earth, and we're in awe of the grandeur of it all, kind of like back in Shudder Before the Beautiful, just like the wonder and awe that we get to experience in life. According to Genius as well, the pale blue arc is a reference to Carl Sagan referring to Earth as a pale blue dot. And then the second verse and second bridge basically just discuss other instances of evolution along the way and how we are connected. The last two lines are, we return to the very first one, greet the one we'll soon become. So kind of saying like all the past life forms, we're all connected still. And the importance of gaining a better understanding of the past to understand our present, I think, is kind of in there as well. I'd say overall the song is just about, you know, evolution and the interconnectedness of all life on Earth. And then track 8 is Edema Rue, and this was originally going to be the first single before they switched it to Elan. I love this one. It just has like such a traditional like Nightwish sound. The music just really actually gives me kind of old school Nightwish vibes, with the keyboard part especially, I think, back to like the Oceanborn and Wishmaster days. From an interview, Thomas said that the name comes from the novel The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I think he's like a big fan of that author, and the Adimaru are traveling musicians. So the lyrics basically just describe a musical group who impart a sort of truth to their listeners through their music. They know these ancient and mystical songs, and through their music they are sharing them. The line "see us dream every tale true" reminds me a bit of story time when it says "I am the story that will read you real." So I think it's just kind of about how they bring music to life in this case. So I was just going to kind of talk about those lines, I think, because otherwise it's pretty self-explanatory. But "see us dream every tale true, the verse we leave with you will take you home." I think it's just kind of how their music is like affecting their listeners and how they're able to impart this truth to people. And obviously I think it's supposed to compare to Nightwish, like with the traveling musicians. Obviously, if I was more familiar with this book, I could probably make more connections, but I think that it is just supposed to be connect to Nightwish, kind of like Night Quest on Oceanborn, kind of about the band itself. Track 9, we have Alpenglow, which is my favorite from this album. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but the keyboard riff in Everdream is like the instrumental and the tune of the song. Like in Everdream, there was like one riff on the keyboard and then the tune was different. But in this, it's like that intro tune, but also the tune of the verses. It's almost identical, which may be why I like it so much, because that's my favorite Nightwish song. Overall, it seems to be about humanity in general and the things we experience during our brief existence, which basically sets the stage for the greatest show on earth. Verse 1 is about Earth's creation, when it says, "Once upon a time a song was heard, giving birth to a child of earth and verse." It could be about Earth's creation or like the creation of music and art specifically. "Together we slay another fright, every jub bird spooks of the past, close your eyes and take a peek, the truth is easy to see." Kind of saying like when we become scared of things we have to face, we just have to remember that the simple truth that humanity has existed for years and people have already endured so much. And then the chorus, "We were here roaming on the endless prairie, writing an endless story, building a Walden of our own," referencing back to my Walden. "We were here grieving the saddened faces, conquering the darkest places, time to rest now and to finish the show and become the music one with the Alpenglow." I think in the chorus, the show could be life, like a human coming to the end of their life. On Genius, it said an Alpenglow is basically a mountain sunset, so like the sun setting on the end of life. And so I think essentially it's saying to become one with nature and all of its wonders, or specifically the sunset is representing the end of life. Then the second verse is "hand in hand guiding me into the light, you the fairy tale guys in blue and white." And then it repeats that. And then the bridge is "You are my path, my home, my star, a beautiful tale within the tale. And when the dust needs to move on, I will tuck us in on a bed of snow, painting white, silencing the valley we built, together we'll sleep, devoured by life." On Song Meaning, someone had an interpretation that the song was specifically about two lovers whose love has held steady throughout their life and everything they've been through. So I can see that in verse 2 and the bridge, because that seems very specifically to be talking about two lovers kind of coming to the end of life versus just humanity in general. If you were going with that interpretation, it's more like we were here, like throughout our lives, not necessarily humanity in general. Like we've experienced all these things that I've talked about in the chorus. So that's kind of a different way of thinking of it, because it does seem like, especially in the bridge, it seems to be about a lover. Like you are all of these things, like a tale within a tale, like our love story within the tale of our lives. So interesting interpretation there. Track 10 is an instrumental, "The Eyes of Sharbat Gula." I think I'm saying that right. And it's based on the National Geographic cover where there was an Afghan girl who had these really striking green eyes, and Thomas was inspired to write a song about it. And he wanted to write a song about children at war, and he tried writing lyrics for it and nothing was working, and then Troy suggested making it just an instrumental with a children's choir, which is what they ended up doing. I definitely wouldn't have like thought of that without knowing what the song was about beforehand, but I do think that it does kind of evoke that once you know that when you listen to it. Finally, we have The Greatest Show on Earth. I am not going to talk about this one forever. I swear there's a lot of references to very specific like scientific things, so if you're interested in that you can go to Genius, but I'm not going to be like listing everything there. I'm not going to go into every minute detail, but essentially the song is supposed to take the listener through evolution. And if you haven't seen, I forget, I'll link it down below. There's a performance, I think it was at Wembley, where they did this, and it's just amazing. They did it when I saw them too. But yeah, it is inspired by The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution by Richard Dawkins, and I did read on Genius, or this might have been Song Meanings, but it samples certain classical pieces as well, which I don't know these, but apparently there's some other songs that are sampled in this, which I think is about the evolution of music as well as the evolution of life. So it's like directly showing that. So part 1 is 4.6 because of the 4.6 billion years that Earth has been in existence. Archaean horizon, the first sunrise on a pristine Gaia, opus perfectum, somewhere there us sleeping. And then there's that spoken part. After sleeping through 100 million centuries, we have finally opened our eyes on a sumptuous planet, sparkling with color, bountiful with life. Within decades, we must close our eyes again. Isn't it a noble and enlightened way of spending our brief time in the sun to work at understanding the universe and how we have come to wake up in it? So it's talking about Earth's creation, like the first sunrise before anything had happened yet, and somewhere there us sleeping. Someone interpreted that as before we existed, like all the atoms that were ever going to make us up were already there. Like anyone who was ever going to exist was already there on the Earth, which is really interesting. And then the Richard Dawkins quote is talking about the miracle of our lives and how we can try to understand the workings of the universe in that very brief time we have here. That also connects back to the song Our Decades in the Sun, kind of talking about what we experience during our time in the sun while we're here. Part 2 is life. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but when it says leading us to the tapestry of chemistry, there's a writing in the garden leading us to the mother of all. That's referring to Mother Earth, and I think the writing is like science, like how we're able to make sense of the earth and nature. And in the chorus, when it says a day-to-day new opening for the greatest show on earth, it's just referring to the life on earth every day. I also thought it was interesting the line that says welcoming the outside world to the stuff of stars. It's a reference to a Carl Sagan quotation. Our sun is a second or third generation star. All of the rocky and metallic material we stand on, the iron in our blood, the calcium in our teeth, the carbon in our genes were produced billions of years ago in the interior of a red giant star. We are made of star stuff. And then it says bedding the tree of a biological holy, enter life. Going back to Endless Forms Most Beautiful, like that family tree, like how all living things are connected. And then the chorus, when it says, we are here to care for the garden, the wonder of birth of every form most beautiful, is kind of talking about how we need to care for our planet and all of the life on it. Part 3 is the tool maker, kind of continues taking us through evolution to talking about the beginning of life on Earth that potentially started in Africa, and then with life came people creating fantasy and religion and weapons. Basically, I think he's saying when there wasn't an explanation for a natural phenomenon, people turned to religion, going back to weak fantasy a bit there. And when he says enter Ionia, the cradle of thought, the architecture of understanding, the human lust to feel so exceptional to rule the earth. Ionia, I think it was on Song Meanings that someone explained, it's a reference to the ancient Greeks and the philosophers that are credited with coming up with the principle of logic that changed the way people kind of thought about the world around them. And then it's also talking about humans' need to like set themselves apart and the need for power, and that ties into the creation of weapons and wars. When it talks about hunger for shiny rocks, for giant mushroom clouds, the will to do just as you'd be done by, enter history, the grand finale, enter rat kind. And on Genius it's explained that it's a reference to the ancestor's tale there, which predicts that rats may become the dominant life force if humans go extinct after like a nuclear disaster. And so like if our weapons got to that point and we ended up destroying our planet, rats would be what was left. And then the chorus is, man, he took his time in the sun, had a dream to understand a single grain of sand. He gave birth to poetry, but one day he'll cease to be. Greet the last light of the library. So again, it brings back that our time in the sun, our lives are so short, but throughout the history of humankind, which in the chorus is represented by man, so much has been discovered and we've built on our understanding throughout the years based on, you know, other people's discoveries. And as the years go by, we'll uncover more and more, and we just have this curiosity in us and we can create art, but one day all of that will go extinct and it won't matter anymore and there will be nothing left and everything we accomplish and all of our power will disappear. But the bottom line is that we existed, and so that's that we were here line. And in that performance, it's so beautiful. And like the audience is like shouting it with them. It also kind of goes back to Alpenglow with the we were here thing. You know, people often leave marks on things, you know, like on a bench that was special to them or something, or like, you know, saying like we were here, or so and so were here, like wanting to leave your mark. I think that's what it's kind of going for there, but in a much bigger sense. I'm not going to read the whole spoken part, but I would encourage you to read it and follow along if you're watching this video if you want for part 4, the understanding. Quick summary, it's a Richard Dawkins quote, and basically it's saying that when all is said and done, no matter how hard life is, the bottom line is that we're lucky to be here because we could have not existed at all. Like, there's all these possible people, these possible combinations of genes and DNA that never existed, and like we got the chance to exist. And it's truly a miracle that life has evolved so that we can exist the way we do. Yeah, so that's kind of the summary of what he's saying there, and I just think it's just a really good way of thinking of life because we can really make ourselves crazy. We're thinking of like, why are we here? Like, what's the point, etc. But when we think of it that way, like we could have not existed at all and never gotten to experience anything. It kind of just brings things into perspective a bit, I think. We're all going to die eventually, like when he says, yes, we're going to die, but that makes us the lucky ones because we got to exist. I think this song really brings together everything that was previously on the album. So we have being in awe of the nature and life around us, learning from nature and everything that came before. We have the interconnectedness of all living things on Earth and enjoying our time in the sun with the people that matter to us. Those are kind of the themes that I saw, and it's all brought together in this, like, we are lucky to exist, we're lucky to be here. So that was my interpretation and breakdown of this album. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you have any requests for videos or reactions that you'd like to see me do, please leave them down below, and I would also love to hear your thoughts on this album and your favorite songs. Please let me know what you think about this album or if there's anything I missed. Yeah, thank you for watching. Please give this video a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.